One of my favorite sayings is that without context, a text is a con. Now, imagine for a moment that I'm wearing a Darth Vader mask. Without context, me wearing a Darth Vader mask could mean any number of things. It could mean that I'm a Star Wars fanboy, a guy who likes to dress up. I could be delusional, or it could be as simple as I have a 5-year-old son who's noticed the new Star Wars movie trailers that have come out, and they've reminded him that he loves to have lightsaber duels with his dad. Towards the beginning of class, we watched a clip of Ben-Hur that depicted Moses going up the mountain and having a moment with God. He received the 10 Commandments, and then when he came down the mountain, he saw the rest of the people had built this golden bull and were worshiping it. We can attempt to interpret those scenes from our modern understanding, or we can attempt to understand those events as the author and audience would have understood them. How odd would my Star Wars reference be to Moses, who has no grid for this movie now? You see Moses, stars aren't fighting, it's a movie. And it's just, well, a movie's a bunch of pictures that change really fast with sound. So, context. So quick, I am going to provide some context for covenants and for ages that will change the way that you look at that clip again. So covenants are a kind of agreement, and they guide the interaction between a greater king and a lesser king, between God and man. There are lots of different covenants in the Bible. There's the Old Covenant, the New Covenant, which doesn't start at the beginning of the New Testament. There's the Noahic Covenant, the Abrahamic Covenant, the Mosaic Covenant, the Davidic Covenant. Lots of covenants. And then there's also 3 different kinds of covenant. If you've ever read the Bible, maybe you've noticed that in some parts of the Bible it refers to God as love, and then in other parts of the Bible it seems like he's angry and he's commanding people not to eat bacon. If you know which covenant applies to which time, then the whole Bible should make a lot more sense. And there's also different kinds of covenants. First, there are grant covenants, and that's when a greater king comes to a lesser king and just wants to bless them with no rules attached. And this is often the kind of covenant that God offers in the Bible. And then there's kinship covenants, and that's the 10 Commandments one. That's the Mosaic covenant. And this is where each party takes on a little bit of obligation. After God offers a grant covenant in Exodus 19, Israel declines and suggests a kinship covenant where God is both their protector and their punisher. And this leads to a whole lot of weird things that take place later in the Bible. And not only that, but Israel repeatedly violates this covenant. And the third kind of covenant is a vassal covenant. When a covenant partner dies, that's the only time that a covenant can be changed. And so when Moses dies, God goes ahead and downgrades that covenant to a vassal covenant. And this is in Deuteronomy. A greater king, an example of this is when a greater king has conquered a people, and in exchange for allowing them to live, he requires tribute, allegiance, taxes, and etc. The rest of the Old Covenant is under this kind of covenant. Alright, so that's covenant, now ages. Imagine living in slavery for hundreds of years where the only God you know is Pharaoh. Your group leaves Pharaoh and is now wandering around in the desert, and then your leader, he goes up to this mountain to talk with a different God. This is taking place during a transition between ages in the astrological sense. Astrological ages are about 2,000 years and correspond with a specific constellation. The age that is ending in the movie is Taurus, the bull. The new age is Aries, the ram. And each transition, it feels like the world's ending. After Aries is Pisces, the fish. Maybe you're familiar with the Jesus fish. Jews certainly thought that the world was not going their way around that time. And then the next age, the one that we are entering right now, is Aquarius. And just think how many people have declared that the end of the world is here, or it's near at least, in the last couple decades. I'm probably older than almost all of you, and I'll say a lot. Anyways, Taurus the bull is the age that's passing away in the movie. And what does Moses find when he comes down the mountain with the Ten Commandments? He sees the Israelites worshiping a golden calf that they've built, a golden bull. People once again clinging to an age that's ending. So hopefully now that clip that we watched towards the beginning of class makes more sense, and you've got a greater appreciation for context, and you understand why it matters so much when dealing with and reading pieces of literature that are thousands of years old. We weren't the audience, but we have to understand what the audience understood.